Would like to call the Charter Township of Chesterfield regular Township Board meeting for Tuesday, April 11th, 2023 to order. Could we all please stand for the Anchor Bay Junior ROTC color guard? Item 3, roll call. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Here.
Treasurer Elliott.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph. Here. Trustee DeMink.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg.
Here.
Clerk Berry is here.
Item 4, approval of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by
Support.
Clerk Berry, supported by Treasurer Elliott. Clerk Berry.
Clerk Berry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee DeMink. Aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 5, presentations. There's a presentation tonight by Finance Director Vicki Bauer. Vicki, the floor is yours.
Hello. Tonight we're going to talk about the 2022 financial review. Our covered topics are the 2022 revenue and expenditures prior to audit and final adjustment. Minor changes are expected. We're going to cover the 22 estimated fund balance. We'll review the healthcare fund, both the history and the 2022 fund balance. We're going to briefly talk about ARPA funds, and then our 2023 year-to-date review, where we are today. This slide shows our revenue and expense summary. It has general fund, public safety, building, and parks and rec. You can see it has the annual revenue for 22, expenses, and the net change. General fund had a net change of approximately $685,000. Public safety had a negative net change of $718,000 approximately. Part of the reason for this incurred expense is due to our investment in capital in the public safety fund. So we invested more heavily in the public safety, including our rescue fire truck for about $305,000, 5 new vehicles for approximately $280,000, our scuba equipment for approximately $217,000, our fire station HVAC for approximately $90,000, and our Milo training simulator for approximately $97,000. Next, you can see building had a net change of approximately $23,000, and our Parks and Rec department had approximately a $25,000 net change. Here's our 22 general fund budget versus actual. All departments came in under budget. The total of all departments' expenditures is 72.57% of budget. Next, to talk about our general fund revenue sharing. You can see in our 22 year, we had an increase in that. So the revenue sharing formula takes into account the township's population. In 2022, we received our revenue sharing increase in retro amount for our 2020 census. So prior to that census, the 2020 census, our old amount was 43,381. Our new census came in at 45,376, and that's an increase of $1,995. Here's our public safety fund. The public safety fund is broken out by department. You can see all departments are under budget. The total of the department expenditure is 92.5% of budget. Here's our summary for the Parks and Rec and Building Fund. Our building is 92.66% of budget used, and our Parks and Rec is 97.17, both of them being under our budgeted threshold. This next slide is our estimated fund balance with history. On this slide, you can see I started with our fund balance of 2017 and had each year from there until current, the gain or loss providing the next year's fund balance. We do have the 22 estimated fund balance that we just talked about in here, bringing it to our 12/31/2022 estimated fund balance. General fund has a fund balance then of approximately $10 million. Public safety is approximately $5,884,000. Building is $83,000 approximately, and leisure services is $646,000. Next, to briefly talk about our healthcare fund. This fund is a relatively new fund. It started in 2019. It's for our self-funding for insurance. You can tell it's done fairly well over the last 4 years, being a positive net revenue over expenditures in each year. It does with the grouping or adding of all 4 of those years brings us to a fund balance for 22 of $1,529,000 approximately. Next, to review our ARPA funds. We received $4,905,000 in ARPA funds. We have an allocated amount so far of $1,311,000. You can see I broke out at the bottom there what that allocated amount is per project. That leaves us $3,594,000 remaining to be allocated. We are around 27% allocated to date. Our last slide is just a quick, where are we today for our 2023 year? We are within our budget on all departments for revenue and expenditure, so we are on track for every fund that is listed.
Thank you, Vicki. Any questions from the board? Thank you, Vicki. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Floor is yours, Michelle.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Michelle Vannerson. I'm the Assistant Director of the Parks and Rec Department. And tonight, Board, I bring to you our idea and our first steps in implementing a community dog park. This is something that has been a community want, a community need, a community request for years and years. We are able to take all of our surveys that we've done in Parks and Recreation, take that information, bring it back, and like I said, take those first steps forward in creating one. We have established a place just out back here in the backyard for the community dog park. It'll be in place of the proposed places, in place of the existing youth baseball diamonds. Those diamonds are currently underutilized. We don't have the ability to maintain them the way that they should be maintained in order to properly use them. And so a better use of that space would be a community dog park. It would be a fenced-in area. We are going to go out to bid for it. Well, let's start with first things first. We're going to get public comments first, then go out to bid, then bring that bid proposal back to the board for a final approval. Tonight, the public's comments will start, but I do want to give an idea of what the bid will look like. It won't be the Taj Mahal of dog parks to begin with. We're going to start small. We're going to start with a very basic fenced-in area, a flat ground, and a couple of benches, something that's easy to use for people who want to utilize the space. There's always funds in the future, whether it's through grant, through budget, that we can add to that dog park feature and add to a space that can really create a nice community area for our dogs and our dogs' owners. So we're going to go out to bid, like it says, for that existing landscape to be renovated, for the removal of the current structures, so those baseball diamonds, and then the addition of fencing just around the perimeter there with a gate that's able to easily be accessed. So tonight we'll start the public comments for that. Those are going to be accepted from April 11th, which is this evening, through May 9th. At that time, public comment time will close, and then we'll go out to bid for it, bringing back to the board, like I said, that finalized bid that we choose and recommend as the best option. Any
Thank you.
questions?
None here. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
I apologize. We're on number 6 now, department reports. Josh, the floor is yours.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, we were just trying to turn to the next slide. So, my name is Josh Sonnenberg. I'm the Facility and Operations Director. Since weather's getting nice, I just want to touch on some of the stuff that we're doing at the parks. As you can see in this video we took yesterday, we're excited about our pickleball courts. We had 20-some players out there last night enjoying the beautiful weather, so we were super excited about that. At Brandenburg Park, also, I wanted to touch on our boat launch project. That is the next slide. So as most of you know, we had replaced the existing slabs. If you were out there, you'll notice that a couple of those slabs had broke free, and there was some trip hazards, and they were sinking pretty bad in some areas, to keep it simple. The in-water work is pretty much done. They were doing a slab just above at grade. You can see those saw cut marks that you see in the picture. Our engineering department is managing this project. We're hoping to have it done at the end of this week. Luckily, if weather works out, if not, at max, it should be done at the end of next week, because we know everyone's itching to get in the water. The weather's getting nice. We want to get our boats in. The next item on our list, staying at Brandenburg Park, this has always been a big concern of ours. If anybody's used the pavilions at Brandenburg, you get 20 to 30 people in there, and you got a grill the size of a small cooler. So we upgraded the grills. They're going in this year. We're pretty excited about that. It's a simple thing, but it makes a difference for those who are using those pavilions. We're putting a big 4x4 family-sized grill. So we're excited about those. We're going to put those at most of our pavilions, and then we're going to add some more next year. And these are a heavy-duty, really nice grill, so if you're out there cooking, people really enjoy it. The next item we're also excited about at all of our parks is the board approved us to get replace most of our picnic tables. We finally got the parts and pieces in, so our team right now is building and assembling 69 picnic tables to replace most of the park tables at Brandenburg Park, which is well overdue, so we're excited about that as well. The next item on my list is we're going to go over to, this is Weber Paddle Park. And if you can see in the distance, there's a series of those road barricades. We get a million questions on why we use these road barricades, and the reason for this picture is to show the residents that that park, the ground can get pretty soft in the winter months, especially like a winter we've had where it's never really frozen. So right in front of you, that used to be a section of grass, and as you can see, if we didn't put those barricades in to block off most of the park, that park would get tore up in the winter. We got a lot of cars and a lot of ice fishermen in there. So over the next couple of years, as that park settles, we'll always in the fall put those barricades down, but I'll be happy to let you know that in the next week, we're going to pull those out. So we're going to open that park back up. But also, I wanted to let people know that we've had a problem this year, and it kind of goes into my next issue. We've had some people riding dirt bikes there, and they've kind of tore up the stones and kind of shot them all over. And we also had a complaint this past week that the weather's getting nicer. We got some kids riding. I don't know if you've been out to the Salt River Nature Center. We got a nice sidewalk that runs along the Salt River. We got some kids running dirt bikes up and down there. We've had some neighbors complain. So we are going to get our cadets, and we're going to start posting some signs and really try to crack down on that so we don't have any problems. The biggest fear is we don't want to have somebody hurt in the future. There's a place to ride dirt bikes, but on our city sidewalks where people are trying to walk and ride bikes, we're going to try to keep you off. So that's all I have.
Thanks, sir.
You're welcome.
Trustee Domingue.
Some quick announcements. Registration for all programs will be open tomorrow, Wednesday, April 12th. The season spans from May through August 2023. Registration is available online or in person. Chesterfield Parks and Rec Department is currently hiring a few more positions for seasonal work. Positions are available for ages 16 and older. Visit the website, www.chesterfieldtownship.org, to apply online. And lastly, facility rentals. Facilities are available to rent for several occasions, including sports games, baby showers, birthday parties, and grad parties. Pollard Park, baseball fields, and soccer fields are seasonal. Brandenburg Park, pavilions, and indoor party room are seasonal. And the community center, indoor party room, gym, and meeting space are year-round. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you, Trustee Deming. Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. A few minutes from our April 5th public safety meeting. Department is anticipating several retirements going to occur and have occurred. To that end, the department will be conducting oral boards at both the Macomb and Oakland Police Academy on April 26th, 27th. Director Bassett is graduating from the Fire Academy on May 12th. Are you got all Ben Gay yet, or you don't need it anymore? Okay. We also have Cadet Matthew Ford from Macomb Police Academy, and we also have Cadet Joe Tripiano will be graduating from Oakland Police Academy also on June 1st. Lieutenant Tiffany Kroll and Sergeant Matt McPhillips will be completing staff and command graduation also in May, Northwestern University. And the Chesterfield Township Police Open House will be May 13th from noon to 3 p.m. at the police department. Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of other issues from our April 5th meeting. We have some updates on what we will talk a little bit about on our agenda tonight, which is the building exterior renovation update, and we have some preliminary numbers coming in on that. We will have a radio dispatch build-out. We like to have as many training sites for dispatch to work, and there will be a new dispatch build-out coming soon. The Fire Department's Township Safety Academy training, which is offered to Township employees, is been very, very popular. We've had a lot of Township employees participating in this free training event, and it really helps to make sure that the workplace is as safe as it can be. And lastly, we wanted to thank the Fire Department for their outstanding work recently, which was in the news and all over social media, involving the tanker truck rollover incident, and the expertise that our fire department possesses. They were out there and able to take the lead and make sure that the safety protocols were adhered to. The environmental concerns associated with a full tanker truck, rolling over, had to offload the fuel before bringing the tanker back upright, and to have experts, just top-notch experts within our own department on scene supervising that was something that Chief Miller was extremely proud of, and I see why he is. Great job to our fire department in that particular recovery effort. And that pretty much covers our April 5th meeting. Thank you,
sir. Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. A couple of notations first about licenses and permits. For those who have acquired garage sale permits from the township for any garage sales, it is that time of the year coming up when we're going to be seeing garage sales. The clerk's office for many years issued those permits, but it was a couple of years ago that we ceased doing that and transferred that particular operation to the building department. So anyone seeking a garage sale permit, please do so from the building department, and they will issue one for you. Also, since we're talking about dog parks, the dog licenses that our ordinance requires are actually not issued by the township. They are issued by the Macomb County Animal Control. So if you do have a dog that needs to be licensed, you need to contact the Macomb County Animal Control. You can apply for that online through their website as well. In May, the clerk's department, myself in particular, will be doing a presentation for the board and the public on the impact of Proposal 22-2 and what its impact will be on our administration of elections. That will be a comprehensive presentation to the board on May 9th. There are many things that still have yet to be resolved, but we do know what the provisions of 22.2 say. We know what is required of us, but we also know that many of those requirements are in fact in conflict with current Michigan election law, which needs to be changed, or some other traditional ways of administering elections. So we will be providing a presentation to the board in as far as what those issues are that are raised with that implementing that particular set of proposal provisions. And then I would just like to end my department comments, not so much with a report, not so much with a clerk's department specific one, but we've talked quite a bit about our public safety department, how much we have invested in our first responders, but it's not often, we see their budgets every year. Occasionally we'll swear people in, and that's when we actually see these folks. Typically, we don't have an occasion to have personal interactions with them, and thank goodness, because if we are, then we know something's gone wrong. But I'd just like to let the board know that I had the unfortunate or fortunate experience to have a personal experience with our first responders last Friday. Did have a medical emergency that they needed to be called in for, and I just would like to report to the board that I could not have been more impressed with our first responders, from the dispatcher who took my 911 call to the firefighters who first responded to me out in their parking lot, to the medics who came in the ambulance, who took me to the emergency room. And they were very much the consulate professionals, all of them, kind, courteous, and treated me with respect. And I think when we are having an illness or an injury, it's usually not our finest hour, but yet they treated me with dignity and respect. And I don't think we can ask for any more than that. Outside of they were incredibly proficient, they were very, very prompt. I'm not sure I would have received that level of care and concern outside of Chesterfield. I'm sure that I may have, but I can assure you that I did experience that here. And I want to thank them. I don't have their names, but they know who they are, and I'd like to thank them personally for the tremendous amount of care and the again, the absolute professionalism with which they handled that particular event. So much so that when I was in the emergency room and after the attending physician had come in, those paramedics stayed with me until the until the attending physician came in. The dispatcher never hung up the phone with me. Those firefighters never left my side until the medics got there, and the medics did not leave me until the attending physician saw me in the ER. And the nurse later said to me, "You must really be somebody special, because those medics never left your side, and they completely filled the physician in on everything, and they were very comprehensive in their care for you." And I said, I'm not the one who's special, they are. And so we are very blessed here in Chesterfield to have that. We've invested a lot over the years, with Supervisor Kersten being our public safety director, and then now Brian Bassett, just outstanding job. And I want to thank you very much for that. Thank them personally. You guys just outstanding, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Berry. Item 7, the consent agenda. Clerk Berry.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. 7A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of March 28, 2023. 7B, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Motion to approve the consent
Motion by
agenda as
Clerk
presented.
Berry,
Support.
supported by Treasurer Elliott. Comments from the public?
John Spica, 53978 Conner Drive. Just a quick question regarding the taxpayer's checkbook on the payment of bills. Under Brandenburg Park, for 3/17/23, it's listed as a Linda Elliott, and then on 3/14/23, Township Board approved to waive. I'm going to assume that the F stands for fee, $19.79 for $200, so it doesn't quite explain what that is. If I can get an explanation of that, I would appreciate it, and if there's any relationship to Kathy Elliott on this waiving of the fee. Under Brandenburg Park, I noticed that we cut a check to the state of Michigan for $100,000 to take possession of the park. And just one quick note, I noticed a lot of money being spent on the technology aspect, more than what was originally discussed by this board. That's it. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? I have a motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Clerk Berry? I'm sorry. You can address that.
Yeah. Linda Elliott, I don't know if she's related to me. Elliott's quite a popular name. But that was the presentation that was made, if I'm correct, Michelle? Yeah, so that was a presentation that we waived and the board approved last week for the group, I'm sorry, Michelle, what was the group? The Life Handicap Fishing. So they're waiving that. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I have a motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Clerk Berry?
Clerk Berry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 8, public hearing. There is a public hearing scheduled for tonight. Clerk Berry?
Item 8A is to conduct a public hearing of necessity for the 2023 Sidewalk Replacement Program, Zone 3.
Do I have a motion to open the public hearing? Motion by Trustee Demink, supported by Trustee Vosberg at 7:27. Clerk Berry, call the roll.
Trustee Demink. Aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Mr. O'Connor, please go ahead.
Good evening. This is year 3 of this program. We had a table, this is the public hearing of necessity for the residents who are, getting their sidewalks removed and replaced. We had a table out here and answered questions. We've taken down addresses, names, and email addresses, and also the specific item. As residents come up and continue to talk, we will continue to record that information and then reply to them in an email.
Thank you, Mitch. This is an opportunity for the public to speak at the podium on the sidewalk. If there's anyone that wants to address this issue or agenda item, please step to the podium. Seeing no one stepping to the podium, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Supervisor Kersten, supported by Trustee Demink. Clerk Berry?
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 9, regular agenda. Item 9A. Clerk Berry, when you're free.
Item 9A is to approve a recommendation by the Engineering Department to adopt Resolution 2023-16 and confirming the necessity for the 2023 Sidewalk Replacement Program, Zone 3.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Clerk Berry, supported by Supervisor Kersten. Mr. O'Connor, anything?
This resolution was prepared by Jeremy Schroet with Spalding the Decker and also Attorney Siebert. And it's similar to the prior years.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from the public? Any comments from the public? Comments from the board? Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor, I won't belabor this point very long. I 100% support sidewalk replacement. I do, however, oppose this, as I have the previous 2 zones, for one simple reason, that every slab of sidewalk replaced gets a tacked on 25% engineering fee, and I think that's obscene. I don't know how that we put in charge a company who designates the slabs to be poured, and then we incentivize we incentivize their findings with a 25% engineering fee. It's really a deep reach into the pockets of the residents, and I can't in good conscience support this.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? I have a motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Supervisor Kersten, to approve item 9A. Clerk Berry.
Clerk Berry, aye. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No?
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Item 9B. Clerk Berry.
Item 9B is to approve a recommendation by the Engineering Department to award the contract to Luigi Ferdinandi and Sons as the lowest responsible bidder in the amount of $258,440.06 for the number 5 rated sidewalks in Zone 3 of the Sidewalk Program. Per Township Ordinance, an additional 25% engineering fee to Spalding DeDecker for a total project cost of $323,050.07.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Support.
Treasurer Elliott?
Bosford.
Trustee Vosberg? Support? Mr. O'Connor?
Yes, we received 4 bids in February for the sidewalk replacement program. We're having the public hearing tonight. The residents are asking, and we're telling them what flags have made the list. They do have the opportunity to make the repairs themselves. They have 30 days to notify the township, then an additional 30 days to complete the repairs. If they're not done by, I think that puts us to mid to late June, then the township's contractor will start the work and replace the flags.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from the public?
John Speaker, 53978 Connor Drive. I'm in full support of the sidewalk program, the replacement. The only thing I don't support, and I've been clear since day one, is the additional 25% fee that we give Spalding DeDecker. That is, to me, a ridiculous fee. When it's all said and done and all the sidewalks are done, it's going to be in the millions of dollars that the taxpayers have paid Spalding DeDecker when we have an in-house engineer at the township here. So I support the sidewalk program, but giving Spalding DeDecker 25% of the taxpayers' money, it's ridiculous. So I do not support that. I didn't support it day one. I don't support it now, and I won't support it in the future. So I will continuously fight to get that 25% fee waived. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. Any comments from the public? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, just one question for Mr. O'Connor. The residents that look to opt out and replace and do their own work, they do the work, are they immune from the 25% administrative fee as well then?
They are immune, and the township will also inspect the work after it's completed, and that's also not immune. It's, there's no fee
Thank you.
associated with that inspection.
Trustee Anderson.
Yes, Mr. O'Connor, if a resident opts to do the repair themselves, they have to get a homeowner's permit to do it, or permit to do it?
They have to notify the township. There's a certain website that's in the letter.
Is there a fee involved, or will
No,
that be
there's
waived?
no fee
Okay,
involved.
thank you.
Yeah, it's not, the program isn't meant to be punitive.
Any further comments from the board? Treasurer Elliott.
What are the parameters that these sidewalks are chosen? How does that work?
The number 5 rated sidewalks.
What does that mean?
Well, the number 5 is it's the most, there's a lip of 1 inch, there's cracks, more than 2 feet long, 1/4 inch wide. The cross slope is greater than 6%. The longitudinal slope is greater than 8%. There's scaling in the sidewalk, or there's water ponding on the sidewalk. And most of these ratings are specified by the ADA.
Well,
This
these are defects that we came up with as a part of the guide, and every one of those defects from 1 to 5 is outside of the ADA compliance. So what we try to do is create the worst of the worst defects to limit the amount of money that we're charging to individual homeowners, but also still meet the intent of limiting liability.
So there's really no way for you to rate something that doesn't meet those parameters because you put it on all the letters, is that correct?
Correct, and we measure it in the field, and we actually keep a GIS system that shows those measurements, and we've been challenged, and we go out and verify it.
And you take pictures of every single one, is that?
We do.
You do take pictures. And so if somebody has a question, they send an email?
Yep, you can send an email, you can come into Township Hall, we can print them off, or we can send emails with the locations, the exact defect, what the measurement was, and a picture showing exactly which flag to remove.
How many total households were affected by this Zone 3?
About 400.
So there's about 400 households in this zone?
Yep.
And is that managed by the township or by Spalding D. Decker?
We manage that as far as putting together the letters, the correspondence, the GIS defect pickups, the GIS system, and we do construction inspection, construction management, basically cradle to grave.
And so sometimes people will want to have more sidewalks, like sidewalk done, or maybe they'll have their whole driveway done. And do they contact you, or do they contact the contractor, or how does that work?
They can contact us, or they can work with our inspector in the field. So a lot of years, homeowners will add on additional sidewalks, and we can add that to their assessment. Other homeowners will do their driveway. That's usually a separate contract with the contractor, but yeah, we're very flexible and work through those.
And then sometimes some people are, and I don't know what that process is called, where they're kind of going in and they're lifting, having the sidewalks lifted. Does that always, what is it called?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, mud jacking is allowed for the defects with the 1-inch lip. So you can lift the one slab back up to get rid of that lift. The township doesn't do that mainly because it's a specialty contractor and it would limit our economy of scale. We're trying to create economy of scale by having a lot of sidewalks replaced and entice the contractors to bid it lower.
Okay, and so what has been your percentage of, in the other 2 sidewalk assessments, what percentage of the assessment, how many people have normally, what percentage of the folks have taken and used the contractor?
That use the township's contractor, greater than 90%. You know, there's usually only 5, maybe 10% tops who opt out.
Okay, and then also on this, as a treasurer, we decided when we started this program to make it as easy to get the repairs done on residents, so we're going to stretch it over a 5-year assessment with 0% interest. And so you'll get a bill in the mail, an invoice in the mail of offering you to be able to pay it in full, or you can choose to have it put on your taxes and with the 0% interest and stretch it over the 5 years. And it does, yeah, it does say that.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? I have a motion by Treasurer Elliott, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve item 9B as presented. Clerk Berry?
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 9C.
Item 9C is to consider a request from DG Residential Sales to amend the consent judgment for Maria's Villa located at the northeast corner of 24 Mile Road and Chesterfield Road.
Do I have a motion to approve? Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve. Is there support?
Second.
Clerk Berry? Support? Mr. Palin?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. This proposal was brought forward by the applicant to amend a consent judgment that dates back to 2003. This is approximately 33 acres located at the northeast corner of 24 Mile Road and Chesterfield Road. The current consent judgment allows for 45 single-family homes. The proposed amendment is for 76 duplex units. The underlying zoning of the property is R1A single-family. The proposed amendment would be most consistent with the township's R2 two-family zoning district. We had the Giffords-Webster do a review on the proposal as submitted, and they used the R2 standards for that review, and the proposal did meet the requirements of that district. When you look at this area in the master plan, it is designated as blended density, which is approximately 3.5 to 7 units per acre. The proposal is for 2.31 units per acre, so it would be consistent with the master plan. And as I stated, we use the R2 district in the review because we have not currently developed a district for our blended density that the master plan talks about. So as I said, all of that would be consistent with that. The product that's being proposed is very similar to Lottie View Riverside, which is located at Jefferson and Hooker Road. So that's a brief overview. The applicant is here, and I can also answer any questions if there are any.
I'll start with the board. Any comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Seeing no comments from the public, I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Clerk Berry, to approve 9C. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Item 9D.
Item 9D is to consider a recommendation from the Planning Commission to approve the planned unit development for Austin Catholic High School athletic facility.
So moved.
Support.
Trustee Demink, supported by Clerk Berry. Jonathan, the floor is yours again.
Thank you. This is for Austin Catholic High School, located on the north side of 23 Mile Road between Fairchild and Chesterfield Road. This proposal has been in front of the Planning Commission for quite some time now. We finally got to a point where they are recommending approval to the board. The proposal is for an athletic facility with a football field, soccer field, baseball fields. They will be lighted. The PUD process is for greater flexibility for the developer, and that provides some benefit back to the community. So there is some flexibility to the ordinances. With that, the applicant is requesting some waivers from the zoning ordinance, which would be the PUD ordinance requires a 50-foot perimeter setback. This current proposal is 10 feet on the west side of the property, and the light poles, coaching box, and the perimeter fencing are located within that 50-foot buffer on the north side of the property. Also, an 8-foot PVC privacy fence with a landscape buffer is proposed in lieu of a wall or a wood fence, which is required by the ordinance. The light poles range from 60 feet to 80 feet in height, which exceeds the ordinance maximum of 25 feet. And lastly, flood lighting is proposed, but that is not allowed by ordinance. So if the board chooses to approve this, those items would have to be memorialized in a development agreement. That's something that can be reviewed administratively and then executed by the supervisor. But after a couple of public hearings and more meetings beyond that, the Planning Commission is recommending approval with the one contingency that township staff will be on site when the lighting engineer does the light level study to ensure that it complies.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from the board?
Mr. Supervisor, as Mr. Palin
Trustee
stated,
Demink.
this has been vetted very well by planning. It's gone on, I think, for a good 9 months. There's a lot of changes and kept changing, working with the people from Austin High School, the lighting. There's a lot of questions on that. Our resident expert, Mr. LaBelle, was very on board with that and watching that, as long as with Mr. Carr, who is our, as I say, expertise architect who sits on planning with me. Like I say, is passed by the planning commission, and all members vetted and questioned. Like I say, this went on for, it's got to be, what, 9 months or better, Jonathan?
I think it's been about 2 years,
Been
actually,
that long?
since their
Wow.
pre-application phase.
Sorry, old-timers setting in, but it's been a while, so I think it'll be a good program, and we finally came to a lot of agreements, and they worked with us, and we worked with them.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Comments from the public? I'm sorry. Treasurer Elliott, I'm sorry.
So if this passes, how long will it take before they can start getting some sports over there at Austin Catholic? He's smiling.
The applicant is here, can address that. They would have to do some engineering work and some permits, but they can answer what their time frame is.
Good evening, Jim Baker. I'm Assistant Principal and Athletic Director at Austin Catholic High School, and we actually do provide 13 varsity sports at this point, but we rent all of our facilities and have to co-op with some other schools. So this facility will allow us to bring those sports back and drastically reduce our athletic budget from renting facilities from New Haven schools and L'Anse Creuse and a lot of other facilities. So we estimate that once we built this project, within a couple of years, it would help boost our enrollment, and then we would get the football program. Football is the only sport that we would build in this complex that we don't currently have. So.
Thank you, sir. I have a motion by trustee Demink, supported by clerk Berry, to approve item 9D. Clerk Berry?
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 9E.
Item 9E is to consider the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve a conditional rezoning from R1A residential one-family to RM3 residential multifamily located on the north side of 23 Mile Road, west of Chesterfield Road, parcel ID 1509184544003, with the applicant proposed conditions of townhouse-type units, 103 total units, 75 two-bedroom units, with one-car garages, and 28 three-bedroom units with two-car garages.
Do I have a motion to approve? Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve.
Support.
Supported by, I missed it, trustee Joseph?
I think Vosberg might have got me just at the photo finish, but either way.
I'll stay with trustee Joseph, if you don't mind. Mr. Palin?
Thank you. This is also on the north side of 23 Mile Road, not too far from Austin Catholic High School, directly adjacent to the current mini storage that's being constructed up there. This is a conditional rezoning from R1A to RM3. The state statute allows for conditions on a rezoning when proposed by the applicant. In this case, they are proposing, which was stated when Clerk Berry called the item, which is the number of units, number of two-bedroom units, three-bedroom units, so on and so forth, that will need to be also an assigned agreement. The master plan designates this area as blended density as well, and the proposal is consistent with that. Again, we don't currently have that ordinance in place, but the RM3 that is being proposed is consistent with that. The Planning Commission, after the public hearing, is recommending approval based on the following. 1, the entire area is planned as blended density residential. 2, the future land use map is written for blended density residential uses. And 3, it is conforming to the density level of 3.5 to 7 units per acre. And the applicant is here if there's any additional questions.
Thank you. Trustee Demink?
This issue was also vetted in front of the Planning Commission and received unanimous approval. There is one parcel in the center that they're going around. But Mr. Callis and Mr. Ecabelli presented in front of the Planning Commission and was vetted by all members of the Planning Commission and was approved.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Any comments from the public? A motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by trustee Joseph, to approve item 9E. Clerk Berry?
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Item 9F.
Item 9F is to consider the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve rezoning number 364 located at 47240 Jefferson Avenue from C1 Local Commercial, C3 General Commercial, and R1C Residential One Family to MX1 Jefferson Mixed Use.
A motion to approve?
Second.
Trustee Vosberg, supported by Trustee Joseph. Again, Mr. Palin?
Thank you. This is located on Jefferson. It's the Lake Shore Party Store, being proposed to be rezoned to MX1. If the board recalls back a few months ago, a new zoning district was brought forward, the MX1 Jefferson Mixed Use District. That was a result of the work done in the master plan and one of the goals and objectives. So that's this coming to life. The applicant is proposing to do a microbrewery in this location. It is important for the board to note that when considering a rezoning request, that it's not the use specific, it's the zoning as a whole, so any use in the district could be permitted. This just so happens to be one of the uses that is permitted in that district that the applicant is planning to do in the future, but would still be subject to come back to the Planning Commission for site plan review and make sure that it does meet all those ordinance provisions. And the Planning Commission is recommending approval based on the zoning being consistent with the master plan. And the applicant was here, I don't know if he still is. Oh, yep. He's still here, so he can answer questions or I can answer questions if there are any.
Thank you. I'll bring it up to the board. Any questions? Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, no, not so much a question, just thank you to the petitioner, and I forgot to mention it on the last agenda item. Both of these packets were very thoroughly put together, and the attorney for the last petitioner never lets me forget about a time when we didn't agree with one another, but on this particular issue, the packet was very, very thorough and consistent with the master plan. They were, in talking with Trustee DeMink, very cooperative with the planning team to look at issues where there was some, questions, and the patience with both of these petitioners was just very much appreciated. On this current agenda item, I received a very detailed packet outlining all of the reasons where this particular petitioner is complete lockstep with the master plan, and the MX1 district was something that we talked about. I say we when I was on the Planning Commission, and then Trustee DeMink finished up, which is a very exciting new district, and it is, I think, quite visionary, and the mixed use opportunity there, especially in the Jefferson corridor, is, I think, exactly what the township is looking for in terms of the master plan. So thanks to both these petitioners for their dedication and their thoroughness in the presentation. And thank you, Trustee DeMink, for spending a little time to break it down for me. And I think these are two exceptional agenda items, and I enthusiastically support both. Thanks.
Thank you. Trustee or Clerk Barry?
Thank you. Well, tonight, Trustee Joseph and I are sharing a brain. I know that'll shock everyone. But we agree more often than we don't really. No, I was thinking the exact same thing, and I wanted to mention to Director Palin as well to Trustee DeMink to thank them for helping navigate us through this. I know when we were having discussions about the master plan and all those changes that were taking place, it was pointed out to all of us who are participating that there were certain parcels within the township that, for one reason or another, hadn't been developed, hadn't been redeveloped. Areas were languishing. We were seeing blight. I know that was a concern of Trustee DeMink's, and I don't know necessarily these two parcels, but I do know that when I looked at these two rezonings, I thought this is great because now we are beginning to implement what we had hoped to see when we were having discussions about the master plan. And so bringing this type of revitalization to the township, I'm very happy to see it, and I'm glad that now something that I saw kind of go from a concept now actually into becoming a reality. I'm looking forward to seeing these projects develop, and I'm very, as Trustee Joseph said, also grateful to the petitioners for stepping forward and being innovative and having some vision for what can be there, and I believe that that's going to make Chesterfield a more vibrant place. So thank you very much for all of your assistance.
Trustee DeMink?
This also was vetted very well by Planning Commission. We had a public hearing. There was a lot of concerns by some of the residents back on Fortin Street regarding noise and things like that. It's a deep parcel. Mr. Smith is sitting over here to my left, and he assured the residents that he would work with them. He's not gonna have late hours. It's a brewery, so it's no hard liquor, stuff like that. He said in the back, he's gonna have maybe a small patio with some cornhole games. But he was definitely adamant and spoke with the residents at the public hearing, because a lot of them were upset about it. Some old-time residents, and I reminded them that there used to be a bar right there next to Lakeville Market, was Juke Vandewheels, it was called Juke's back in my younger days, and then became the Blue Whale before it burned down. Mr. Anderson, you probably remember that from your early years in the township, and I remember it from my early years as a teenager. You know, this is, I think, is gonna work well, and, like I say, Mr. Smith has assured us and assured me, and that's who wrote the letter to Mr. Joseph on his desire and to work with the township, so that's where it came from on planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? I have a motion by Trustee Vosberg, supported by Trustee Joseph, to approve item 9F. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink. Aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 9G.
Item 9G is to approve a recommendation to award the 2023 Commercial Landscaping Service for I-94 and 23 Mile Road Corridor to Unique Clips LLC in an amount not to exceed $17,500.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve. Do I have support?
Second.
Clerk Berry. Mr. Sonnenberg.
Good evening. This goes back to last year. One of the things that Supervisor Kersten wanted to see was some of our entry points cleaned up into Chesterfield. You know, we did some work over at Raleigh Place, and one of the questions and discussions we had was a 23 and I-94 interchange. Right now, MDOT cuts it roughly once a year. So the thought was, why can't we clean that intersection up? Back in last November, the board approved a request for Supervisor Kersten to enter a contract with MDOT. At that time, we had a request for $14,000 to service that area. And after we put some bids out, pretty detailed bids with we asked for basically everything we could think of, and then we knew we could scale it back. So once we got those bids and our staff met with each contractor, they sat them down and kind of went through the scope. We had a good exchange with Unique Clips, and really what you see in front of you is their bid came back a little bit higher, but we're looking at this thinking, once we part it down with the contractor, that we can complete this work for the $17,500. That means we get reimbursed from MDOT for the 14 at a cost of the township for $3,500. So we're gonna say that's a do not exceed number for us, because we know that depending on the weather, we get a dry summer, we might be cutting it a lot less. So I just wanted to share that information with you.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from the board? Comments from the public?
John Speaka, 53978 Conner Drive. That is, that's an important spot. It's an important entry point. People getting on to 94 and getting off. So for the last month, that whole section there has looked horrible. So it's definitely it's a sore eye on this township. That's just one of many spots here in Chesterfield that need attention. But I mean, this is probably one of the few times that I actually agree with Mr. Sonnenberg for the difference, if it doesn't exceed the $17,500 for the $3,500. I mean, that would be a good deal for the township, and you know, picking up and having this contractor do. But again, we need to, when this contract expires, we need to keep a close eye on that corridor, because that is a sore spot. And when I mean a close eye, we need to keep a close eye year-round on that. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public?
Marcia Adair, Raleigh Crescent. When the DPW went over there and started taking out tree trunks, and I called you, Supervisor Kersten, They cut my cable and it was out for 4 days. I had to pay for my cable that I didn't even have, and you couldn't even return a phone call because your people cut our cable lines. So now what are they gonna do over there? Cut my cable lines again? If they're gonna make it look nice, that's wonderful. But if they're gonna cut my cable, y'all are paying my bill, not me.
Any further comments from the public?
I apologize that I was unaware. We did pull out, there was large trees that were grown in and dead. So we'll make sure that if there's something we can do to prevent that in the future, absolutely we'll do that.
Any further comments from the public? I'll bring it back to the board. A motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Clerk Berry, to approve item 9G. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Item 9H.
Item 9H is to approve a recommendation by the Supervisor's Office to renew the annual membership for Semcog at a cost of $6,501.
So moved.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve. I'll support you.
Remember we used to fight over this, Dave?
Just my 2 cents on this. Obviously, the invoice comes to the township. I think this is a great group. I think we benefited in my time here. What we've gotten back from Semcog in partnerships and grants and continuing to this day, I think this is well worth the investment in the township. I think the previous boards, I'm not telling you guys anything you don't already know. So it is a value, it is serving us well, and that's why I support this. Treasurer Elliott.
We call it Semcog, and it means Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, and it supports coordinated local planning and technical data and intergovernmental resources. And what they do is they really support and help us get grants and do planning and work with all of the governments. So it has been truly a tool in many ways.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I've been involved with Semcog and the work that they do since being a county commissioner, now here on the township board. And I do remember the days when the township didn't approve the membership. And I came over and talked to some of the people here because I don't think they understood what the value was. And that didn't take long, and they did understand. And it's exciting for me to sit here and listen to everybody wanting to approve the agenda item or make the motion for it. So thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the public?
John Speaka, Chesterfield Township, and understanding what the value is for Semcog. We're supposed to get a monthly report from our members that sit on Semcog, and I haven't heard a report from either Kathy, and I can't remember in how long. So that's probably what causes a lot of confusion in this township, is the residents aren't kept up to date on what's going on with Semcog. And I can't ever recall somebody actually, giving the residents a list or telling us what value or what return we're actually getting for our money. I mean, we use words, grants, and, we get a return on our $6,500, but show us in black and white what we're getting for our $6,500. And then maybe, the residents would be for this and would understand what this whole program's about. But definitely after the meetings, if you attend, please keep the residents updated on what's going on at Semcog for the township. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor, the comments about the updated reports, I think are reasonable. And the reason I say that is we don't get a lot of feedback. It's not incorporated in a regular way. We do have board liaisons that are assigned to participate in Semcog events. And being a past representative of the board, I know that their general assemblies are typically, you know, in very entertaining sites, and they really do draw their membership to the meeting. It is a business meeting, but it also takes place at a, you know, University of Michigan, the Big House, or, you know, museums, and it's quite an event. But there's far more to being the Semcog representative than just those general assemblies. And so the benefit to the township, I've talked about it here publicly, that I don't feel that the representatives provide a lot of feedback. But what I do think we get our money's worth out of are the department heads that utilize the resources at Semcog. So our DPW, our building department, our engineering department, there is a tremendous amount of data that can be harvested from Semcog, and those individuals don't typically, you know, give chapter and verse reports or updates. But I assure you and any resident who wonders about the $6,500 annual fee, as I say, I'm disappointed in the lack of feedback from our liaison and our board-appointed liaison, but I'm satisfied that enough of our department heads utilize the Semcog resources, and I think we get back far more than we put in, despite the fact that we don't always get, you know, updated from our representatives. But I do know that they attend. I see the pictures on social media with the networking and things that go on, and I see when Semcog comes out to the township, there's always you know, photo galleries and things that make their way to the township website. But aside from that, the department heads do utilize it. I know that for a fact, and it's the reason that I support that. And Trustee Demink is right. When we had a time in the township, there was a legitimate disconnect from the value, and we were not utilizing it in the way that we are today. And I think that we are utilizing it in a way that keeps us up to date, and Semcog does a phenomenal job with data and research, and that's available to us as members. So I think it's a worthwhile expenditure, but appreciate the comment.
Thank you. Treasurer Elliott?
The most recent thing that was of value was a planning grant for the Salt River planning, and that was done out of relationships, and the board report would have been the agenda item that was approved here through Semcog, and it was approved by this board. Going to those meetings are truly just about conversations and learning about the resources, and then bringing them back to the supervisor and working with the supervisor and saying, this is what's happening, this is what's going on, and this is what's coming down the pipeline. There has been reports given to this board. It's not on a monthly basis because there isn't enough new data for a monthly basis, but it was given last summer and after the General Assembly. This past General Assembly was all data, and if this board wants to sit and listen to the data, they are welcome to, or every board member has assigned, does receive the Semcog email with the exact link to that exact data. I don't know why the criticism every time this issue comes up. We are utilizing the Semcog more than we ever have in the past, and we also have received more grant money in the last couple of years than we ever have in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion by Trustee Demink, supported by Supervisor Kersten, to approve item 9H. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 9I.
Item 9I is to approve a recommendation to amend contract with Partners in Architecture, PLC, for bid preparation, scope, and oversight of Fire Station 2 demolition project.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve.
Support.
Treasurer Elliott. Trustee Vosberg, I'm sorry. Mr. Sonnenberg, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm going to go through try to summarize a bunch of information and give you a quick overview, kind of how we got to where we are. And Mr. Malone is here from Partners to answer any questions about the additional questions about the process along the way. We started with a feasibility study for the fire station, and we went through a series of exercises with this. I apologize, I know this is hard to see, but there was 10 pages with this one document. I'm just going to try to give you the summary. What's in front of you is a breakdown, and what they did is they went through item by item, and they assigned cost, all the replacement items based on 3 areas, basically from worst to best. And they analyzed that, and they came to a complete summary. And basically, you were looking at $300 and some thousand for general repairs to bring that fire station 2 up to a safe state. That was the first analysis they did. The second analysis we looked at was a complete renovation, making the station about 11,000 square feet. What would that cost? What would that look like to renovate the station completely? We went through the exercise, spent a lot of time on the details. They came up with a number over $3 million. The third thing we looked at was a cost analysis of basically other fire stations comparable in that size, cost to build those fire stations. We went through all the details from A to Z on that. Looked at, the cost versus value. And then what we wound up coming up with at the end of the day, to summarize it, was that station at the cost of the taxpayers to rehab that station, renovate, or remodel, it just didn't make sense. So we also looked at even as storage, as like a senior activity center. I mean, we just about went through every exercise you could. Before we spent all the money in the contract trying to run down every possible scenario, we came to a point where we're like, all right, we all came to the same conclusion. It's really in a township's best interest to just demo that building at this point. So what you see in the contract in front of you is we had about $19,000 left in their initial study, and we're proposing just to reallocate those funds, 16,000 of that funds, to just go ahead and let them manage the demo project of that fire station. So they would put out the specs, go over the bids, get the contractors, and manage that project for us under that remaining balance, instead of just spending it trying to look at every possible scenario to use that building.
Thank you, sir.
That's my quick summary, sorry.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? Trustee Jones.
Yeah, I appreciate the summary, Mr. Sonnenberg. The question I have in terms of deciding what to do with the building, I appreciate you touching on all of the different repair, rehab, complete rehab, and I guess when we first started this and when the building was originally closed, it was closed for safety reasons, and we recognized that that was the primary problem. It presented a risk to the employees who were, that was their home, that was their workstation, and we had electrical problems, we had HVAC problems, we had, significant health and safety risks associated with that building. What happened, unfortunately, was it became just a quagmire of concerns from residents who were worried about everything from response times to fire protection, medical cover, all of the things associated with what you would expect if you close down a fire station. And so from an operational standpoint, we look at our long-term plans, and I have the benefit with Trustee Anderson of being on the Public Safety Committee, and we recognize that long-term planning, we see the development and growth in the north end of our township and the expansion of our fire operations to take into consideration the increased population on the north end. So I'm wondering how much did our operational plans, like in consultation with Director Bassett or Chief Miller, do we look at the building, in terms of it's one thing to look at the cost of renovation or the cost of a partial upgrade, or but how much did the operational intentions and long-term planning of the fire department play into the decision to go ahead and demolish it? What, can you touch on that? Because a lot of people, just very concerned, and when they see the building being raised, it's going to reconstitute some of those concerns, especially when we have things like ISO evaluations coming in, and people are worried about their homeowners insurance rates. And does this impact those kinds of things? And do we have any perspective on that?
Great question. I can't speak to the homeowners insurance and a lot of that, but I can say that in our evaluation, there was some discussion. We did look at some heat maps that were provided. We looked at, to your point, that north end. When you draw the circles around the fire stations, having 3 on the south end and nothing on the north end doesn't make sense. So I know Supervisor Kersten, we've had some brief discussions on, there is some property allocated on the north end for that in the future. We just aren't sure that that's the exact right place for it at this time, but definitely as the north end develops, there should be something in the north end of the township.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions from the board? Just to follow up on Trustee Joseph's, yes, we've considered that all the way back to 2017. The impact of closing the station obviously doesn't go over well in any community, but the operational plan of the Public Safety Department, particularly the Fire Department, was addressed. We've met all those needs. We monitor response times closely. The fire chief does a great job. The director does a great job of staffing and making sure that that area never missed a beat in any issues, whether it be police or fire, EMS response. And we'll continue to take that into consideration as we move forward. And as you pointed out, and as Jonathan pointed out, or Josh pointed out, the next step is, okay, where do we go? What do we do? And literally that's going to take a committee. We're going to sit down and discuss it and figure out what's best for the community as a whole. Any further questions from the board? Any comments from the public?
John Speaka, Chesterfield Township. My concern on the north end isn't so much with the police department. We have a phenomenal police and fire department, and the response time is outstanding. My concern is with the fire and medical response. For example, if you lived on the north end of the township where that station got shut down, and you bought a house, and Trustee Joseph had a good point. As far as homeowner's insurance, I'm going to say that your homeowner's insurance is going to be a lot higher because the response time for the fire department is going to be a lot longer than if you were in the near vicinity of a fire department or in the near vicinity of a station nearby. And then the other concern, too, is on the medical end. Example, if you're having a heart attack or a stroke, and I know that we've got MedStar in the area that responds to, medical emergencies. I get that. But to have just the response for the fire department, to have something close in the vicinity on the north end for those people, I mean, if I lived on that side of the township, I would be pretty concerned about not having a fire department that's close by, because I think that's pretty important. And I know that's one of the things that we considered when we were looking, in Chesterfield. So, but I think that's something that needs to be taken seriously, and I think we should try to work on something to put on the north end for the residents on that north end. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public?
Mike Wharton, 50393 Bauer. One of the issues going on if, a long time no see, one of the issues if you expand for future fire stations is you're going to need to look toward expanding for manning power as well. If you have 3 stations within the township, but under the current full-time firefighters, you're going to be basically spread thin to 2 men per station, in which case if any personnel were not able to work on that day and no one could fill in such a capacity, you would be down an entire station. Therein lies much of the problem. You have to not only expand for the future, for coverage, but also for the potential for growth within the township, thus meaning more personnel. And we are working on less personnel than we had before the 2008 financial crisis. This is something that needs to be addressed, despite there being more population and more businesses than 15 years ago. If you're not able to, recover from that position with both manning and the future growth of the township for the northern end, and it's just going to be spreading thin resources that are extremely limited. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Bring it back up to board. Treasurer Elliott.
I'm in support of this agenda item, which is to approve a recommendation to amend the contract with Partners and Architect for the bid preparation, scope, and oversight of Fire Station Number 2's demolition. Correct? All right. So I'm in support of that. So I don't think we're talking about opening. I think this is about a demolition project of a very dilapidated building. And I know that since I've been here, we've had that conversation quite a bit. I do want to address one other thing. I have never, ever, ever heard anybody in this township say that they were concerned about any sort of issues with their homes or their public safety, or I believe that we have an outstanding fire department, an outstanding police department. I'm very proud to live in Chesterfield for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, if you haven't heard any comments about concerns about run times and things, then you're not listening. Because simply put, there are concerns, and there are legitimate concerns, and I understand why there are concerns. The issue is, what do we do with those concerns? And we reacted, I think, appropriately, and that was when the decision was made to close the station, and the questions tonight are germane to the demolition because they speak to operational needs. And so before you give the approval to demolish, you should be sure that you're operationally okay. So the questions are germane. And in terms of the concerns about run times, if you were around the corner from that station, it only makes sense that it might take a little longer should you have a problem. The question becomes, what did we do in response to that? And I think the supervisor talking about, one, we enhanced our relationship with MedStar to take into account medical emergencies. We did that immediately. We had MedStar presence specifically stationed in that area while we were monitoring run times as well as the predictive software that MedStar brought to the table. They keep an exceptional amount of data. They combine that with our dispatch and our CAD system to look at how many runs come in on certain days at peak times. And so they were able to strategically, again, great work by the fire department in cooperation with MedStar. But this was all part of a bigger picture, which was to take our fire department away from potential ambulance things and make them the highest trained specialty force in the county. And so that was part of our sort of grand design when we looked at, and I hate to go back into the history books, but a lot of board members weren't here then, so I understand their questions being a bit remedial. But the mission was to constantly look at the safety of our residents. And we did that in partnership between our fire department and our police department and our MedStar partners. And I thought, and I think we continue to manage that well. And I'm glad to see that when we looked at demolishing this building, we looked at the operational needs and considerations of safety and ISO. And in terms of the comments made about, homeowners rates going up, there's a very detailed and elaborate list of variables that go into the determination of a community's ISO rating. And it's not just proximity to a fire station. It takes into account our DPW comes into play. How many hydrants and where are they? And are they in working order? And all of these things that we have been very, I think, ahead of the curve. And I'm happy to hear that the accreditation process in the fire department continues to go well. And all of these issues are constantly being monitored and evaluated, and not just by our people, but also by the MedStar team. So these questions are germane, and there were issues, and there were a lot of people in this boardroom. We were wall to wall when we demolished, or when we closed that building, and people rightfully saying, what about us? We didn't shy away from it. We said, we hear you, and we're going to respond to you, and we're going to make sure, and we did. and I'm proud of what we've done, but it wasn't because there were no concerns and everybody was just happy, because they weren't. And we'll continue to do what we've done and monitor it and make sure that we make smart choices and we don't shortcut people's safety. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve item 9I. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 9J.
Item 9J is to approve a recommendation to amend the contract with Partners in Architecture, PLC, for the design, documentation, and oversight of the municipal office interior renovation project.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve. Do I have support?
Support.
Treasurer Elliott. Mr. Sonnenberg.
Thank you. The Township Board approved the recommendation to award a contract with Partners in Architecture for the design, documentation, and oversight of the municipal office interior renovation project in the amount of $61,800. The contract was signed in October 27th, 2021. The scope and services has been expanded, as well as the additional project oversight and management services. A complete list of these changes is outlined in the attached letter. The current contract amount is $61,800. The proposed increase is $169,820 for a new contract total of $231,620. I apologize. I'm going to get my... So, once again, I'm going to go through some documents and tell you how we got here and where we plan to go. First of all, this started where anybody that works in this building, and from all of us in facilities, the biggest issues we have in this building, the structure is good, the outside envelope, the square footage, all great. The biggest problem with this building currently is the HVAC system. It's original from the early 90s. All the equipment is out of date. The only ones that we've replaced is the senior center with the CBDG grant years ago. The existing building is fed with a hot water baseboard or hot water loop that dumps into a series of VAV boxes. They're like a furnace in your house, and there's 70 of those inside the building. All of those are typically controlled from a control system where we could go in and dial those up and down. The problem we have now is a lot of those boxes don't work, and the controls are obsolete. They don't function at all. We're basically flying blind. We really feel it on these cold days, warm nights. So the boilers have failed a couple times. We brought them back to life. So the driver behind this study was the HVAC system. We know going into this that we are going to upgrade the HVAC system. Once we started looking at the HVAC system and the way it works, you got a lot of those VAV boxes in the ceilings of a lot of these rooms. So if we're going to tear into those rooms, what can we do operationally, and what does this look like? So once again, we're planning long-term. So Partners went in and they evaluated every single office and space and how it's used and the way it functions. That's that first sheet, but there was 11 other sheets that tied into it. They went through and they did a computer model of the existing building where we sit today from the paper prints that we had. Then, after a series of discussions and renovations and plenty of meetings with staff, and we analyzed how the building was used and the best possible uses moving forward. For example, even simple things like right now when you go to the building department, you go down to the building section, you get your papers, and then you walk down to Treasury. We looked at possibly having this one octagon counter serve everybody's needs when they walk up, from getting your permit to paying at the treasurer's counter. Everything that the public touches would be done in one octagon. And that kind of makes sense, and we have the footage, the square footage to do that. And then moving all the staff that really don't deal with the public too much back over to the building department side. So this is like a long-term plan, and we figured we might as well look at this operationally and see how much it costs while we're doing the HVAC. So our goal here is, once we got to a design that we liked, to have Partners put together some architectural drawings and then take those architectural drawings to the street and get actual numbers. And then our goal is, with those numbers, to come back to the board and have a discussion about how can we proceed, if we want to proceed, and get all the options on the table. Similar to Simple It Down, just like the landscaping, we'll ask for everything we want, and then we'll kind of par it back to what makes sense. So this, you can see, just to kind of show you the work that went into this process, there was several floor plans that were done, all highlighted with different areas of operation. We went into detail. You can even see the boardroom has been shifted to meet the requirements of the future board to kind of remodel this. You could see it earlier, I was picking at the carpeting here. I mean, there's just a lot of finishes that need to be updated. They went through and they did some computer modeling. One of the other issues with this building is when you're at that counter, when you go through a safety evaluation of this building, there is no egress to the outside of this building to the outside wall. In other words, you're trapped in this octagon. The only way you can get out is come back into the existing hallway. So from a safety standpoint, that's a no-go nowadays. So we incorporated that into the design, and we put several doors. Also, if you've ever spent any time in this octagon, there's an iron wall that runs from one side to the other. You can't even see outside. Those offices are small. They got metal panels. They're outdated. If we're going to tear into those ceilings, we also talked about renovating that office space. So these drawings are just a series of black and white so we could kind of get a real good feel of how this design would flow as they talk through it. They did a cost analysis, basically a breakdown of what each one of these items would cost. But once again, until you do the final drawings, and there'll be some research done, additional research on the HVAC system, how that will look, whether we go with smaller package units or we continue the use of the larger boilers. And then they broke it down item by item. But until you put this out to bid, we don't really want to talk numbers until we go to the street. So that's kind of what our goal is with this next step, is to take this, give it back to partners, have them come up with some plans, and then put those plans out to bid so we can look at all the options with all the cost.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions, comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Hey, Josh, I just, I appreciate you leading off with the catalyst for this being the HVAC. It's a problem, and the, air quality here I've questioned for years, and in terms of, the employee safety and those who work here, it's a tremendous concern. And so I appreciate when you look at, okay, we're going to remedy the HVAC system, and then the tremendous amount of, it's a pretty involved project. So if you're tearing out walls and you're like, that would be a great time to take a look at some of these things. What I worry about, and I just want to put it out on the front end, is we may get to a point where all of these good ideas become cost prohibitive. Like maybe we can't do everything on that list. We won't know until we, get an assessment. But I think it's important to keep in mind, like at a minimum, we have to do something about this HVAC. And I think I wouldn't say it's a delay to take this into consideration, because once you tear apart the building to put the HVAC in, then you're going to duplicate costs. You're going to have redundant costs if you come back in a short period of time after that to make some of the renovations and improvements that you've highlighted. I just think that we also have to be mindful of, depending on the costs, depending on the turnaround time, depending on we can't allow, a perfect plan to be an enemy of a good plan. And the good plan right now is, I think we're all in agreement, the HVAC is priority one. And so I just want to be cognizant of the timeline and the cost and the sort of triaging of what we can afford to do, what we'd like to do, and then what we must do. And keeping those in consideration as we evaluate and discuss these, I think, would be paramount. Because at a minimum, I think you were brought on board at a time when we were in crisis with some really environmentally unsafe situations involving heat exchanges and our HVAC system. So this has been around as long as you and even before. So I'm glad that you've taken this approach, and I'm curious to see what the numbers, sort of lay out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Comments from the public?
John Spica, Chesterfield Township. In regards to the HVAC system goes back to when Mr. Paul LaFata, the former treasurer, was in office. He talked about the HVAC system and how it was in dire need of repair. And he actually had a plan that he put forward that the current supervisor at the time didn't listen to. So you might want to review that plan that he had. It was a good plan to move forward, and it had a lot of cost savings in that plan because he had discussed that plan with me. In regards to the HVAC, Trustee Joseph, you got to remember, Josh is the same individual. When Mr. LaFata was in office, where one of our units had a hole in the heat exchange the size of a football, and he said it wasn't an issue and a problem. So I'm no expert in HVAC, but if you have a hole in your heat exchanger, yeah, you can die from carbon monoxide poisoning. So I'm a little skeptical, on his advice. And the other question is, this is all great, and I think we should start in small steps and, take this in small pieces and start with the priorities, but money's a concern. I mean, when we're giving away sewer lines on the north end and we're taking over sewer lines from Macomb County, where do we get the money to do what's right for the residents of Chesterfield? So you can't have it both ways. So it's all about priorities. And the sewer line from Macomb County weren't priorities at the time. I agree. This HVAC, Mr. LaFata's been talking about it. Had a great plan. But if you guys ever listened to Mr. LaFata, we wouldn't be in the shape we're in now. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public?
We're going to stick to the facts on this, and obviously some of that I would never.
Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time.
But to just to one thing, there was a plan that was introduced, but the problem with the plan was we looked at it. There's a company that makes controls that's really limited on who can service those controls, and there's somebody that's a big fan of that particular controls. We managed big buildings before I came, and they were one of our do not use contractors only because you could only have that one group service those controls. So those are the controls that we currently have, and we don't want to replace those controls with the same controls.
Understood.
We want to
Dr.
open.
Sonnenberg, no,
Understood.
you don't
Okay.
have to.
Understood.
Sorry.
You don't have to defend
Comments from
yourself
board?
from hearsay.
Appreciate it. Any comments from the board? Clerk Barry?
I would say that seeing the issues that the building has had over the last 10 years, this is a very old, relatively speaking, old building built back in the 90s. And it is just no longer conducive for modern municipal service delivery. For years, we've been putting kind of like Band-Aids on it and trying to get by with the best that we could. And now we have a proposal here that will have experts, not people who think they're experts or whatever the case was, come in and actually take a look at this, give us an assessment, and give us our options. But I can certainly attest to the fact that having administered more than a dozen elections here, that even the elections process is, we would often have to have DPW come in, facilities come in and make modifications for us, just because the workflow didn't work right. And obviously but we did the best with what we could, with what we had, as far as space and flow and all of those sort of things. The HVAC has been, as Trustee Joseph said, I've heard the same complaints almost from day one. There was about 8 years ago a massive amount of employees that all complained at the same time of number of respiratory challenges and so on and so forth. And then Josh came on board shortly thereafter and I think made tremendous amount of improvements where he could. But we've always known that this is something of an issue. So I'm pleased to see this on the agenda. I'm pleased to see that we are going to have experts come in and finally advise the board on what our options are and how we can improve not only the health and safety, and certainly the new safety concerns for our employees and everyone who works here, but also getting some actual hard numbers now put to this so that the board can make an educated decision. So I appreciate the agenda item. Thank you.
Trustee Anderson.
I think Supervisor Kersten, maybe Trustee Demink, myself, we can recall when the township conducted its business across the street in Green School, the brick Green School, not the one that's there now. And they were building the palace here at the time. I think there was, as I recall, there was public opinion, both sides about it, and they threw the building up. So it has to be well beyond 30 years old. Treasurer LaFata, I recall visiting him and in his collection of buckets, catching the winter snow and spring snow as it dribbled into the interior of the building. And I think what I like to see is you need to, what you've covered as far as basically the health of this building for our employees is one thing, but as we move into this, do these repairs, it's in your wheelhouse. Set up, you're the new guy on the block as far as that goes to the age of this building. Maybe you weren't even born then, I don't know. But set up a maintenance too that, I won't pick on Mr. Mullins. I hope that they set up a maintenance here where there's a routine things instead of things just going on what you inherited here, that there's a regular repair and a supervision so we don't get caught with these large big bills, not only here but in our other facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer Elliott?
I'm going to echo both Clerk Barry and Trustee Anderson. The building is terrible. Josh has been wonderful every time I call him, and I'm like, there's a wind tunnel in my office. There's rain coming through the windows. There's rain coming through the roof. It's bad. It's heat. It's cold. Nobody likes to go into the supervisor's office because it's like a freezer in there while it's a sauna in my office, and it's bad. And you've been great at trying to, and so I appreciate the work that you've done personally to just really try to accommodate everybody and make it comfortable. The quality for the actual clerical assistants out front that work every day here, the quality of their workspace is just not acceptable anymore. And we have done everything we can to try to open up the space and get them some more light, leave doors open, things like that, because it is kind of dreary. The desks are beat up, they're old, the furniture is bad. And so this is and as Clerk Barry has said, the flow of traffic, the flow of doing business doesn't work. And so I'm in support of this, and I look forward to the next step. Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies, Trustee Lossberg. You've been quiet tonight.
Thank you. You know, we all spend time in this building, so it's very easy to be able to see things and to be able to talk about them. Sort of like when you talk about your own home or somewhere that you're very familiar. And one thing I heard on the presentation, and I also agree with all the other comments that have been made, especially for the people who work here every single day, their health and safety. It's also it's for the public coming here to do business, and that there's a logical workflow for that too. I was amazed to find out people start on the north end of the building and they have to make their way over here to pay for something, when if it were all located in the same place, it would just be much more efficient for the residents of the township. They're the ones paying for all this. They ought to be able to use it in an effective manner. Thank you.
Elliott to approve item 9J.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosper.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Item 9K.
Item 9K is to approve a recommendation to amend the contract with Partners in Architecture, PLC, for the design, documentation, and oversight of the Police Department exterior renovation project.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Trustee Demink, Supervisor Kersten will support. Josh, you want to begin?
Sure.
Mr.
Thank you.
Sonnenberg, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir. So this, once again, a lot of details. I'm going to give you a quick summary, and then we can discuss it. So we started off the police station, same thing with all three of these. We did a detailed, or I should say partners, thank you, Mike, did a detailed analysis of the building, how it operates, space by space. This is, once again, the end of a long document summarizing how the square footage of each space, how it works. And these are documents that'll be great for us in the future because they put a number to each room identified on an electronic print. So when we do service work orders, we can use all these numbers moving forward. So it's not just for this, but we'll incorporate it into other things. So along with that, they did a series of interior changes to the building. And these were driven from comments, not from facilities, but obviously the staff on site, the people working in the building, Captain McNair and his team, Director Bassett, all had influence and discussion on the interior. We service the police department. We don't recommend on how they operate their facility. And unfortunately for that building is anybody who's been inside the police department, and thankfully I've only been there since I've worked here, it's beautiful on the inside and horrible on the outside. So these were done to do some inside improvements. We started on the inside focusing on operational stuff to make the building a little bit better. And we went through a series of changes and improvements that, once again, could be used in the future. But they thought, hey, if they could have a solution now, what would that solution be? So we went, you could see up in the top corner of that, some of their garage area was turned into additional meeting space and training space. That was discussed. Dispatch was discussed. And a lot of new ideas came out of these exercises. So as we went through this process, these are just additional renderings. But this here kind of, once again, is the summary of those costs of those changes. So after we went through and did all that, we looked at the outside of the building, and we even looked at extending the drive on the town center. Like, what would that look like, and how could we function? So that you see that road going out of the bottom, that's Town Center Drive. We even put together some renderings to show the landowner, hey, if we did this or this is what this could look like. We went as far as they went and did some, what the back of the building might look like facing Town Center. They did some renderings for that. After all this, there was two critical areas that we kept coming back to. One is the outside of this building. And you can see from these pictures, and this portion there's pages upon pages of structural analysis done by a structural engineer. They looked at the upstairs of that building, the control joints, the exterior of that building. And the biggest problem with that building right now is the exterior. There's really not, the way that was painted originally is not done properly. So one of the things that need to be done in that building, to Trustee Joseph's point earlier, sooner than later, and don't wait, is the exterior cladding of that building. So what we're going to do with this new scope after we went through all those exercises, and we do have plans for the future if we want to do some interior improvements, is go back to the outside. With this scope, it includes cladding the outside of the building, sealing in some unused doors for safety, and the parking lot, which we've had a ton of discussions about the parking lot, how bad that parking lot is. And that is a complete rebuild of the parking lot, skinning the outside of the building, and then a fence around a portion of security fence for the officers in their cars around a portion of the building. That is the scope that is included in this work that we want partners to move forward with. We want them to put plans together, detailed design details for the exterior cladding and the parking lot, and we're going to move forward on those items under this current scope.
Thank you, sir. Comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Mr. Sonnenberg, did the Phaser study, am I saying that right? Phaser, the parking lot study that we paid for several years ago, and I don't know if you recall that debate, but my suggestion was we just find that little girl that fell into the pit during the open house and just dunk her into the chuck holes, and if she's up to her knee, we grade that as a 1, and a hip is a 2. We spent a lot of money on that Phaser study. Does that have any usefulness now, or 3-4 years of deterioration makes that obsolete and irrelevant now?
So the reason for that Phaser study is the general overview of to get a total cost on all your asphalt and replacement values, and try to kind of include certain projects together to get some cost savings. This project, the reason why we held back so long is if we were to turn that building and we had to put footings and foundations in, it wouldn't have made sense to put a parking lot in and then have to tear up the parking lot to put footings, foundations, and underground. To give you an example, when we were talking about this process, what you can't see in that picture is there's a large telephone pole right in the back with 3 big cans. One of the things we're going to do when we do this parking lot is we're going to get DTE to send that underground. So no matter what we do in the future, since that parking lot's tore up, we're going to take advantage of that to kind of clean some of those things up. That was really the only hold. My understanding is you're right, that parking lot is unsafe, but we just wanted to make sure that we didn't want to, if we were to reface that building, if you put a brand new parking lot in, we didn't want to tear it up, add foundations for the entryway, and have to tear up a brand new parking lot. So
I'm a little tongue-in-cheek with that, the Phaser study, but my point is exactly the point I was making on the Township Hall, which is you have a overwhelmingly obvious presenting problem, and then you go, well, when we fix that problem, we're going to put ourselves in a position to take other projects on And if we're looking at repositioning the building, we wouldn't want to tear up a new parking lot and so forth. But what happens, the byproduct of that thinking is we've gone now 3-4 years with a continually degrading parking lot that poses a hazard to, as Trustee Vosberg said, residents coming in to the parking lot, officers using the parking lot, the open house becomes difficult. We got to strategically put picnic tables over, trip hazards and holes and things. It's like we really had several years of study and analysis when we knew that the presenting problem. And I know that it's not quite that simple, and we have other things to look at, on the horizon. But I just don't want to see the township hall turn into one of those situations. And like the pressing thing we take care of first. And if we can knock out other projects or minimize costs for other projects, great. But the parking lot is long, long, long overdue over there.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? No comments from the public? I have a motion by Trustee Demink, supported by Supervisor Kersten, to approve item 9K. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9L.
Item 9L is to approve a recommendation by the Department of Public Safety for emergency repairs to Marine One in the amount of $5,284.10.
So moved.
Supervisor Kersten will support Trustee Joseph. Director?
Thank you. This is a request to approve the emergency work we had to have done on Marine One in the amount of $5,284. We had it in for service, and during that service, they found additional items that needed to be repaired so that we would be operational as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? Comments from the public?
John Spica, Chesterfield Township. I fully support this expenditure to Marine One for public safety and for the residents. Thank you.
Somebody say something? I'm sorry. I have a motion by Trustee Joseph, supported by Supervisor Kersten, to approve item 9L. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 9M.
Item 9M is to approve a recommendation by the Department of Public Safety for the FortiGate Firewall Upgrade 911 Center at both police and fire departments in the amount of $19,549.08.
Move to approve.
Trustee Demink, supported by Trustee Vossing. Director?
This is a request just for updating and changing out our firewalls, and again, this was part of our plan. We did have this budgeted, and it was just end of life.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Comments from the public?
John Spica, Chesterfield Township. I'm glad to see the board stumbling over each other to support this. So I fully support this. This was a topic of discussion over a month ago that was supported by the board, and I think it's a very important item, and I support it fully. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? I have a motion by Trustee Demink, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve item 9M. Clerk Berry?
Trustee Demink. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 9N.
Item 9N is to approve a recommendation by the Department of Public Safety to authorize emergency repairs to fire truck number 3 in the amount of $14,436.01. This cost includes replacing the front brakes and rotors and rear axle with new pads, rotors, bearings, and seals.
Supervisor
moved.
Kersten will make a motion to approve, supported by Trustee Anderson. Director?
And our final item this evening is just a request to approve the work that we had done on fire truck number 3 for the rear axle and other items that need to be replaced.
Comments from the board? Trustee Anderson?
Thank you. At our meeting last week, Chief Miller explained it. This is routine. It's not anything unique. It's a very expensive repair for these very expensive trucks, so it's all within the frame of the expenditure.
Clerk Barry?
Just a question. I know that we have a fleet maintenance or fleet manager for all of our other township vehicles. Is he also responsible for monitoring the maintenance on our public safety vehicles, or is there someone within the public safety department responsible for that?
Public safety handles it internally.
Okay, so then my next question is, I know I was in this business for a while, and I'm fine with the expenditure, and I know that that's how much those things cost. But I don't think you should have to make an emergency repair for it, because brakes are pretty much a wearing item that should be on a scheduled maintenance, and I just didn't know if there was a reason why these brakes failed. I see that there was a split in the rotor that's a little unusual for rotors to kind of split, but I was just wondering why it wasn't on a regular maintenance schedule.
So it's not that it wasn't on a regular maintenance schedule, it's just literally the price point. So once we brought it in, we don't actually have an idea of how much things are gonna cost. Once we bring it in, though, it's out of service, so we need to get it back as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, because of it being over $5,000, we're gonna need to come before you. So once we know we have items to be repaired, we want them repaired, not instantly, but as quickly as possible to get that vehicle back in service. With it being $5,000, we end up having to call it, under the category of emergency repair, so that we follow the proper procedure for the board to approve it. So I guess emergency maybe sounds dramatic, but it's what we call it.
Perhaps the board needs to maybe reconsider our price point on purchases.
And yeah, and to your point, on those big expensive fire trucks, you don't get much done for.
You might get an oil change, right?
They're expensive.
Just
Thank
follow up, so the board knows, Clerk Barry and Treasurer Elliott and I did meet, that we are revising the purchase policy that currently guides this purchase and other purchases. We're looking to expand it. We'll be bringing back to the board in the future dates, hopefully, I think we're scheduling May to review it. We'll get it out to you beforehand, which specifically addresses these concerns. Just a note on this truck and historically. This truck is reaching the end of life. It served this township well. They bought it in 1993, six. It's reaching its end of life. The fire chief and Director Bassett have already begun the work and process of replacing it. This is going to be a multi-year request. These trucks just aren't available. They take 2 to 3 years to build and even deliver. So this is our largest fire truck. It is a 100-foot aerial. It's the only one we have, and so we will keep it in tip-top shape. And as the director said, when it goes out for maintenance, and they find things during their survey, they obviously make sure that they're repaired. So did I miss anything, Director Bassett? Not to step on your?
No, sir.
Comments from the public?
John Speaka, Chesterfield Township. Again, I agree with Director Bassett. This is an important repair. Obviously, he keeps a close eye on the budget and keeps an eye on before he sends something out for repairs, and to try to utilize the taxpayers' money the best he can. And I think he's doing a great job. But again, this is something that needs to be done, and I fully support it. And Cindy, in regards to your comment, we do have a fleet manager, but remember, when was the last time you seen them do anything that maintenance-wise? We pay them to make decisions. So, thank you.
Any further comments from the public? I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Trustee Anderson, to approve item 9N. Clerk Barry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye. Trustee
Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Item 10, addendums, there are none. Item 11, public comments. Public's welcome to the podium. You can speak for 5 minutes. The clock will start when you begin to speak. Please state your name for the record.
Robert Adair Senior, Raleigh Crescent. For some of us that were first responders for years, we know that a thank you isn't something we got very often. This is kind of a double-edged sword. On Christmas Eve day, I had a major heart attack. And dispatcher Napolitano kept my wife calm, kept her on the phone until they could get the paramedics to my house. I flatlined. I was revived at the hospital. So I thank them they were very quick this time, very quick. And your dispatcher did a great job. So we send a thank you card out to her. But on the other hand, it'll be almost 2 years Memorial Day. I laid on my kitchen floor for 40 minutes, 3 phone calls to 911. My wife was told that dispatch didn't dispatch an ambulance. My wife said, we need an ambulance. Another 15 minutes later, an ambulance finally arrived. Okay, my breathing was very shallow. They got me to the hospital. The question that I asked MedStar was, what took you so long? We're short-handed. Why didn't the fire department's rescue come? We're not allowed to use their rescue. It's just our paramedics. I understand that MedStar is short-handed, but there are some situations where if they're not available, we need to use our paramedics from the fire department. And it should be used for everybody. Clerk Barry, I don't know what you went through, but fortunately they were here for you. I'm not going to knock our paramedics. Our police department does well. And MedStar, what they did for me on Christmas Eve day, they weren't in my house 2 minutes. It's the fastest ride, but I really don't remember much of it. That was my 6th heart attack. And you know what? I will praise our police and fire department. And now that I know the shortage of MedStar, I feel bad for them because they're constantly running, constantly. And Mr. Joseph, remember when I said there's always ambulances coming down 23 from Gratiot? Now I know why. They're responding from the hospital. They take somebody to the hospital, and then they got to run back because they're shorthanded. So I support everybody, and I just wanted to let everybody know that sometimes our paramedics may need to be used until we can get an ambulance there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public?
John Speaker, 53978 Connor Drive. At the last board meeting, it was pretty obvious that our treasurer, Kathy Elliott, kicked off her campaign for next year for treasurer. She came off with personal attacks on myself, lies. None of it was accurate. It was total lies. Kathy Elliott has history in this township. She plays the victim in everything. She's looking for sympathy. She plays the woman card. She plays the sympathy card, and she can't tell the truth. And I'm going to give you some examples. We're going to go back to 2020 when Kathy Elliott ran for treasurer against Mr. LaFata. Kathy Elliott, in her scheme of things, decided to file a false police report against Mr. LaFata. Okay, she files a false police report. At the time, Mr. Kersten was in charge of the police department. Nothing came of it. Then the police report was tossed. But what's disappointing is our current supervisor didn't send charges to be filed against Miss Elliott to the prosecutor's office for filing a false police report. So she's got history for this. So there's nothing new there. There's a copy of the police report out there, and Mr. LaFata will attest to it. So then, on top of that, after the primary is over, Kathy Elliott decides to, at the time we were in the middle of COVID, that she was going to put her outfit on and pass out a propaganda piece, which is called a hit piece, in politics against myself. Of course, she denied all these allegations, which she denies everything, because that's her go-to, is deny, deny, deny. And I had to hire an attorney for cease and desist to put a stop to it, which it did. So again, there's history. So for you to sit there and personally attack me with your lies, it's uncalled for. I'm the resident here. You work for me. And everyone else in this room and in this township, you seem to forget that. But you're self-centered, so the residents aren't a top priority. That was quite evident when Mr. Joseph told you, you need to listen. So you don't listen. So it's unfortunate. You think you're the smartest person in the room. You are not the smartest person in the room. You are the dumbest person in the room. So I'm entitled. You are the dumbest person in the room.
Mr. Speaker,
So,
please stop.
And that's my personal opinion. It's just not my opinion. Talk to your staff, talk to the employees of this township. They'll tell you the same thing. So.
The comments, I don't like to hear, residents talk about people being dumb. I find it distasteful as well. But if we're going to be fair, and when this board meeting closed, she called him a stalker. She referenced him as a stalker. So I don't understand.
It is appropriate.
Mr. Supervisor, I had the floor. I have a point of, what are you gaveling about? I have a point of information.
You do.
Okay,
You do.
so
Let
can
me
I finish my
recognize you.
point?
Let me stop him.
Okay.
This is absolutely unnecessary.
Are you kidding me?
have the-
She called
you
me a
have the floor.
stalker.
You have the floor.
That's an assault. That's
My only point is, I find it distasteful as well, but it goes with the territory. When we engage speakers and we refer to them as stalkers, and they come back and they have an opinion about, we're thick-skinned people, he has the floor. I think your warning and admonition to not make it personal is sufficient, but let him finish.
I'm going to.
Yeah, I just don't like this. I agree, but like distasteful speech shouldn't bring about ridicule and comments from board members. And the whole time he's speaking, there's grumblings and disrespect, and that's not appropriate either.
You're correct.
Okay,
We're going to give him his time back.
appreciate that.
Again, I want to get back to the point. I was called a stalker by the treasurer. Total lie. The only one that was being stalked in that election was me. She was spotted numerous times by myself, my wife, and neighbors in my neighborhood. Did I ever come and complain or file a police report against her? No, I never did. It just came with the territory. My personal opinion, I said it then, and I'm going to say it now. I feel that she's bipolar. That's my personal opinion. She has a mental illness that needs to be treated. And the sooner the board recognizes it, the better it's going to be for the board. Because you can't have an elected official going around calling people stalkers and filing false police reports against individuals. It's wrong. And the sooner it gets addressed, we have an upcoming election coming up. She's already kicked her campaign off. She's already set the groundwork to try to destroy my credibility or anyone else. She tried to do it with Mr. LaFata, with the police report. So there's history there. It needs to be addressed, and we need to do something prior to the campaign. I know she doesn't want to hear it, but as a concerned resident, you really do. You have a mental issue, you need to get help. I mean, your own employees at the township. I've told you many times, you need to stay in your lane. Don't go into other departments. Don't tell them what to do. Stay in your lane. So that needs to be addressed. And on top of everything else, not only do you owe me an apology, you owe Mr. LaFata an apology from 4 years ago. You're very fortunate that Mr. Bassett wasn't in that seat 2 years ago, because I think the outcome of filing that false police report would have been a lot different. You got a freebie. You got to get out of jail card with Mr. Kersten, on that. So, and the other thing I want to address is the budget. You know, you brought Vicki Bauer in here. You did a presentation. You threw numbers up there, but the residents weren't able to ask questions. And to throw those numbers in there, and we're running in a negative budget deficit. So the residents should have the opportunity to ask where the surplus in funds that were added to the new budget came from. I didn't hear any of that. So let's start being truthful with the residents. Let's start working on the real issues. Let's not lie to the residents. And, you know, Mr. Kersten, you called me CNN. Do I call?
Well, I don't know how you follow up that. Last time I spoke at this podium, do you remember what I said? Everyone in this room. That's why I haven't been speaking here for a while. Thought you should just gesture around and see. See the township government you now have. It's never too late to just start anew and just focus on building for a better future. But if it's always about petty attacks, if it's always about disorderly conduct, this is what it delves into. Back to schoolyard fights. Rise above. Be better. Ignore the name calling. Ignore the stupid attitudes, anything like that. Someone's saying lies, they need to stop, but you need to stop listening or giving them the attention they deserve. It's kind of obvious that, and I'm sorry to address in the format of age in this, but perhaps you haven't been online enough to understand how trolling works. Seeing that this is a time for renewal within this township, perhaps now is something of a form of reinvestment. You're looking to tear down something old like the closed fire station, which has been closed and inoperable for 5 years now, and has been a pain in many people's who live in that area's notation, because they have to drive by what they perceived was a good fire station, something that they had in their wheelhouse for many decades, and it felt like the township did not care for them in that area. You should be prioritizing how the fire department is now operating in that area, because it does feel like that part of the township lost something. If you want a better future, you have to start pushing that for the community. And what we saw here tonight with the police department, I think, was a good step toward that. But Again, how many people are even going to see this? Now is the time to reinvest in the township, not just in the form of finances, but in an actual application of leadership and community outreach. That is how it really can be accomplished. Aside from that, it is also time to look toward the future. So many governments are based on this Reagan-esque neoliberal attitude that became dominant in the 80s and 90s, but has its own failings, and it really does feel like that form of government is starting to die off. If you are to invest in such a future, you need to start looking toward alternatives that people are not discussing. How often are you even discussing the rapidly changing advances in AI right now, and how that can be applied toward governmental services? Has anyone here even tried ChatGPT, even just for fun? I ask that as a legitimate question because that is a part of the future, and it's tools that can be utilized not only in government, but in all applications of life. And if you're not willing to learn that, you're going to fall behind. Now, if the people here are even, which I guess nobody's paying attention to me because you're all looking off in the other direction, and I understand nobody cares about anything I've ever said any time at this podium for the last 5 years. It really does become evident. You ignore young people. You ignore people who are trying to just keep this community together. That is the plea I ask for everyone here. Stop the pettiness and start looking toward the future, because if you're just constantly dwelling in the past elections, past slights, past anything, you're just going to end up as king of a pile of rubble. Is that really what you want for Chesterfield? Good night.
Any further comments from the public? I'll bring it up to the board. Trustee DeMink.
I don't have much, but I'm just going to read something. This is from another jurisdiction. Communications from citizens. You may be called to order by the chair or a board member if you attempt to engage the council or any member in debate, fail to address the board or matters germane to board business, use vulgarity, make personal attacks on persons or institutions, or disrupt the public meeting. If you are called to order, you will be required to take your seat until the board determines whether you will be permitted to continue. Those are rules from another jurisdiction that I thought would just read. That's all I got to say for tonight. I've had enough.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'd like to bring us back to earlier in our agenda. I'm very energized at some of the changes that are being made, some of the zoning that's being changed, so that developers can put in businesses that are attractive to the people and housing that people want to have in this community. And I especially like the one project that's across from a school. I think that will be very, very helpful for our local school districts to help them thrive as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Anderson, got nothing?
I think I'll pass tonight. I do have some questions. What I do want to ask about, and I'll talk to you about these ARPA funds that we're using. The board majority is using to plat sidewalks, a hunk of it, and I'm wondering if there's a way what's remaining in it can maybe offset some of our sidewalk project here for our residents, but I'll talk to you later on that.
Yeah, be more than willing. Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, and before I get into my comments, I just the chairing of this meeting can be very difficult at times. I thought that you handled that very well. The difficulty that I have is first, I think it's completely out of line to talk about mental health and start making comments about somebody's mental fitness. I don't know where that's coming from. Like I have very strong opinions, but I think Trustee DeMink is right. That is clearly a very personal attack. Now, if we're looking in totality, the last meeting closed with some unpleasantries. The speaker was referred to as a stalker, and there are meetings before where, you know, he was referred to as a loser and a sore loser. And so I don't know that we can be completely surprised when we feed into that vitriol and it goes back and forth. But I thought the comment that came from the audience about, you know, it goes with the territory, there is some obligation on our part to listen to things that we find distasteful. And I noticed every time this particular individual, or there are a few others, as soon as they begin to speak, we have feedback from the board. I've experienced it myself. It's not respectful to begin to heckle or to call germane, or like if there's a point of information, I brought it to the chairman's attention, chair of the board. I asked to be recognized. I waited. He took control of the situation and made sure that my point could be heard. I waited. And that's the best that you can do in terms of managing the board meeting. But getting up and leaving, I don't understand that. That's an individual that's been around politics for a long time. There's nothing new here. And I thought Mr. Wharton's comments about trolling were pretty appropriate. Like, that is clearly designed to get a reaction. And I don't know if it comes from, you know, frustration about the conclusion of the last meeting. Like, I try to stay out of that. But I do think you have strong feelings. You will always have an opportunity to speak here. But, you know, referring to somebody as bipolar, I think, you know, is beyond the pale. I think that is, you know, just wildly inappropriate. The supervisor was right to admonish you and ask you to stay, you know, with a point that didn't involve name calling. But, you know, again, that's just my opinion. I've been in a position where I've been speaking and stopped in mid-sentence to address comments that were being made by individuals that didn't agree with what I had to say, and I don't think that's appropriate either. It wasn't a great exchange, and I think there's a way for you to make your points without personal attacks, and that's coming from somebody that's you know, not really too shy about going bare knuckles when it's appropriate. But that was really just a little bit rough, even for me. The last several board meetings, I've addressed issues involving employees and employee morale and the treatment of employees. We have sometimes some very heated exchanges amongst ourselves, and communicating with the supervisor, he made it clear that I was to not speak about personnel matters involving individuals, and I won't. And I don't think that I have, but I do have concerns, and I'd like to share just a couple of them. We have an ongoing situation with employees that is deeply troubling to me. And I went back and I watched a meeting where I raised some of these concerns, and that was the February 14th meeting. I talked about having attended an employee who had been with the township for a long time, and there were about 20 to 25 employees there, and the comments from those individuals were distressing to me. They, as I said on that night, it looked like a conversation among prisoners. One had been paroled, and the others were talking about, how could you leave us, back here at this. And the response wasn't great. And Mr. Supervisor, I went back and I watched that meeting, and that was also an ugly meeting, and that meeting had a lot of comments about concerns about selfridge, quality of life, and whether or not the Macomb intercept should be the Chesterfield intercept. And Mr. Supervisor, you closed that meeting by talking about things that were not assessed, like you said that you had been called a sellout or something along those lines. And then you went on to refer to Mr. Speaker as a loser. And these things come back. They come back, and they came back tonight. But in terms of the employee morale and the employee relations, as I said to you in an email this week, when I first started here, and Trustee Demink, you were already on the board 2 terms. You served with 3 previous supervisors. And when you first started, Mr. Ellis acted as basically everything that we now have entire departments for, in particular HR. We had no HR department. Mr. Ellis was responsible, he would say, for HR and PR and IT, and he did all of those things, and it became clear that we should have a dedicated human resource department and a department head, because our greatest asset is our employees. And in the business world, they just volumes of books written about making sure that you take care of your employees, that you would treat your employee exactly the way you would want to treat your best customer to be treated. And that's how you treat your employees. And so when I brought up the idea of morale and my concerns about how we were treating employees, Mr. Supervisor, you said that people exiting the township is just a new opportunity, and that you'd replace them with qualified people. And if they felt like they didn't belong here, that was something that you could not fix. You said that morale, a long time ago, you learned was a difficult monster. You referred to it as a monster that nobody can define. And I would say to you that perhaps it is that mindset that causes us to come to loggerheads over the most recent issue, because I think it's critical that we respond to our employees, especially employees that reach out for help, with help. And when we say we will help our employees and we will be there for our employees, and if an employee were injured on the job in a medical way and we sent that employee to a medical doctor because we're going to help that employee, and then the medical doctor weighed in and we said, oh, we're going to switch gears here and now our attorneys will be handling the case, I don't know that we could argue that we're helping that employee any longer. And I'm very worried. I'm very worried about the consequences and morale in our public safety department. And I'm wondering, why are we spending over $500,000 roughly on an HR department with almost 6 full-time employees, when not too long ago we had no such thing. Mr. Ellis did it all. Now we have an entire department, and we're talking about morale being a difficult monster that nobody can define. And it was Dwight Eisenhower said that the best morale exists when nobody hears the word. When you hear the word morale over and over in your workplace, it's usually because morale is lousy, and that's a problem. But if we subscribe to the philosophy that the beatings will continue until morale improves, we shouldn't be surprised when we have a mass exodus. And I worry about what happens in our public safety team if we don't send a message to them that we are completely with you. And I can't speak for anybody else, maybe with the exception of Mr. Anderson, when I say to our employees and to our first responders that we are here for you, we are grateful for you, and we will fight for you. And nobody is going to be turned out in the cold who is in need of help, that suffered traumatic injuries, mental or physical, on the jobs in the service of these residents and our people and our businesses, and then we just turn that individual out into the cold. And I would just say to the employees that are struggling, please remember, when everything is going against you, it is the airplane that takes flight against the wind, not with it. So stay strong and know that there are people out there fighting for you and that are worried about you, and we'll continue to do that. Thank you.
Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Earlier tonight, I apologize to you. I kind of jumped in and had told Director Sonnenberg he didn't have to,
Fine, everybody wants to be the supervisor.
I didn't want to. I apologize. And it was because I knew that he was going to try to defend himself over hearsay, and I didn't think that was fair. I'm the speaker who talked. I got your first name, Robert, but I didn't get the last name. Thank you for sharing your story, and that's amazing that you survived 6 heart attacks, and I'm glad you're here today. And I was glad you were here to share that. That was very informative, and thank you for sharing. The politician who made the comments tonight has run for office in many communities and made enemies in those communities. And during the election, I found out there was somebody who was circulating an old piece. It wasn't me. It was one of his old opponents. And however, this politician did file an accusation against me and used it as a political tool and still does. However, those accusations were dismissed. I don't normally get upset, but at the last board meeting, I was very, very frustrated with the same gentleman for this reason. About a year or so ago, he came up to the podium and started talking about, I'm not at work because I'm at lunch with my children. This is a gentleman who supposedly works full-time. I don't know how you know I'm at lunch with my children or why you think that is something to talk about here at a board meeting. Very disturbing. And I can go to lunch with my children. It's an acceptable thing. What upset me again was, as I mentioned last time, and I'll reiterate this time, was the comments about Kathy Vosberg's grown children and where they live. Why do you know that? How do you know that, and why do you think that is something to bring up in a board meeting? So that's not name calling. I'm just going to continue to reiterate the fact that bringing people's kids and family into these meetings and making it political is inappropriate. You can call me names, you can say a lot of stuff, you can fill in DNA, make up your own stories and all of that. The things that Mr. LaFata says are Mr. LaFata's words and not your words, Mr. Speaker. They're Mr. LaFata's words. Let him speak for himself. And Mr. Wharton, you do try to always say stuff, and we do listen, and I think you continually want to see everybody get along, and it's not that. Okay, well, I don't always understand, so I apologize. All right, I know you're saying right now, he's saying that it's not that. So I do think that, I always get this impression, Mr. Wharton, that you want everyone to try to get along and try to have discourse. If I've got that wrong, you can tell me after the meeting. At that, the comments that were made were just completely inappropriate tonight, and I'll let those lie in your lap, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Well, first and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for their thoughts and prayers. As far as everyone knows, I think now at this point it's kind of cat's out of the bag. I've been having some health challenges for actually a couple of years now. Kept that quiet for a long time. Some people make a public statement about it. I have not up to this point, but now it's kind of public record. So I'd like to thank everyone for all of their support for the last couple of years, all of your prayers, all of your thoughts. I appreciate every single one of them, your patience. I appreciate that. So thank you so much for that. With regards to the current, and it's been going on ever since I've been on the board for more than 10 years, I've often been the subject of a lot of personal attacks, and I think it's pretty well known by anyone who's been watching that I just don't respond to those things. And the reason I don't respond, it's not that I don't get upset, it's not that I disagree or agree with them or whatever, but the fact of the matter is that I've always believed that when I'm serving in my public capacity, even if I'm attacked personally, even from the board table, it is not appropriate for me to, or anyone, to settle personal matters on your public time. I'll deal with that on my time. This is your time, and I'm here to do your work. So I believe that all comments really, and all discussions, if you're making them in a public forum, in your public capacity, they should be serving the public interest and the public good. And if they're not, they don't belong there. And that goes for all of us in this room, those at the table as well as those in the audience. So just, I think public comments are meant for the public arena. Personal comments, even if it's about someone's professional behavior or professional work ethic or whatever the case might be, those are meant for a personal arena. The only reason you make those statements publicly is because we're on television. I've had many clerks and contemporaries and other elected officials, we have this discussion often at conferences, and they say, if we weren't on television, if it wasn't televised, this is why we don't televise our board meetings, because we believe people act differently when they're on TV. If it was just the 5 people that are normally in the room on a board meeting day, would you still say what you say? But either way, what we do say, and I take responsibility for this myself, both personally and professionally, and that is that we need to be very cautious that we are serving the public good when we say the things that we say, because they do have long-range implications. And the reality is, so long as we keep going back and forth, we're going to keep going back and forth and we get nowhere. That doesn't serve anybody. So we're all here for the benefit of the township. We're all here to do the very best that we can do in the seats that we're in, whether that's in the audience or up here at the board table. And I believe that we need to keep the personal in the personal space and the public interest in the public space. And if we keep that separation, I think it will serve everyone best. Thank you.
Thank you. Real quick, just want to thank Michelle Vanderson and Facilities for bringing up the dog park and bringing that to our attention for public comments. I wish the public and hope the public does comment on that in the coming months. There are several issues that come along with that, with our parks. Is we will be working with public safety to update our ordinances on the appropriate modernization of what can and can't go on in our parks here in the township. You recognize the tone tonight. There is, it was building and infrastructure again, structural problems, both within this building, township fire station, and the police station. Unfortunately and historically, and I've found, speaking with other communities, is there's always a lack of attention, and Trustee Anderson spoke to this. You build it and then you walk away from it and nobody touches it, and there isn't a mechanism in place to make repairs. So we are working on that also, and that will be part of this plan moving forward. Trustee Joseph, to specifically, you keep invoking Mr. Ellis's name, and I had conversations with him almost daily up until he passed. And he relayed to me several mistakes that he lived by, and they were all HR. And we're still paying for a couple of those mistakes that he made and admitted to today. And that's unfortunate. And the open conversations that I had with him specifically about that was the evolution of our HR department today, which is only staffed by 3, not 6. I don't know where 6 is coming from. I appreciate the support on managing the meeting. It is difficult, particularly when you have animosities. None of this is necessary. None of it is. Whether it be a resident or between board members. The unfortunate side of this is, as the legal counsel advised, we have to have thick skin. I'm good with it. You can say whatever they want. But they can't interrupt and disrupt the meeting and again make medical diagnoses of people from the floor. And that can't be tolerated. There's more to be said about morale, and there's more to be said about personnel issues, and you know better than anybody, we can't do it. Everything that I have relayed to you, and that has been relayed to you personally and directly, has been in confidence to keep you informed, as I do with all the other trustees on the board. For any insinuation that I abandon don't care for is not well placed. And it's wrong. And I don't appreciate that. And I don't know why you would even go down that road. I've known you too long. I know who you are. I know what you are. And for you to lay that on my table when you know that that's not true. And again, I'm willing to have any discussion you want. But they're personnel matters and we can't address them here in public. But I don't walk away from people, particularly people that I care about, in an organization that I helped build. And I don't like that label, and I think that's unfair. There isn't a person in that building that I didn't personally hire and recommend hire.
We'll see how it plays out. I'm okay with that. I think you should re-listen to my comments.
I did listen to your comment. I took
I didn't
notes.
lay it at your feet.
I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Trustee Doing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?